Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today to the presentation of Dreams of Bronze, the latest book by our beloved Swedish author Camilla Läckberg, who is here with us today. The book has been released today in Spain and all over Latin America, so I encourage you to run to the bookshops and buy the book. I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful time today. First of all, I would like to thank the Telefónica Foundation for welcoming us in this wonderful space. I'd like to thank Lara for her support in our search for disseminating culture in Spain and all over the world. I would like to thank here Susana Santaolalla, who's going to be leading this interview. She's a journalist. She works for the radio. She has a huge track record, and she's received the Golden Antenna, a wonderful award, so congratulations. And on behalf of Planeta, let me thank you all for being here today. We have the sold out sign, as we say in concerts. We've sold out tickets, so we're very happy to see that Camilla is still causing so much interest in Spain. I'm her publisher, but I'm also her big fan, and I'm really excited to have her here today. And thank you, Camilla. Tack. I would like you to know that I've taken a few Swedish lessons, but well, I wouldn't like to take too long because it's Susana who's going to ask the questions, but I would like to say that, as you for sure know, this book, Dreams of Bronze, is the latest installment for the time being, because this morning we found out that, as Camilla pointed out, never say never, because Faye might come back in some years, in some 10 years, nobody knows. So, well, for the time being, this is the ending of this wonderful trilogy that is different, particularly when taking into account Camilla's literary track record, because it's more of like psychological suspense novel. I think that she's taken different perspective in a very interesting way. As I was saying, Susana is going to ask her about the novel, about her career, but I would like to say once again, thank you, Camilla, for giving us this time. You have a very busy agenda. We know that. You were in Copenhagen yesterday in order to support the release of your latest adaptation of your Super Charlie books into the big screen. It's a book that she wrote when she actually had her son Charlie, but she was in Paris recently as well in order to support the launching of the Erica series that is of course based on her iconic Fjällbacka crime series, and it's a series that has been shot in the French Basque Country, so I really hope we'll be able to watch it in one of the platforms that are available in Spain. And then The Läckbergs is going to be launched in April. It's going to be a reality show, a docu-series. They've been following the family for weeks, that TV crew, so I'm sure it's going to be incredibly interesting. So thank you again, Camilla, for giving us this time to promote your wonderful book in Spain. And having said that, without further ado, I'll give the floor to Camilla and to Susana so they can start this conversation, and at the end there will be a Q&A, and we will have a book sign here by the exit. You'll have the chance to buy the book and have it signed by Camilla. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Thank you very much.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Miriam.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Welcome everyone to this conversation with Camilla Läckberg. I'm so excited to be able to share this time with you, Camilla, because we did that over Zoom during the pandemic, because we presented together. I think it was your second installment. It was a lot of fun because you did it from your home. We could see your husband on the background, and you could see all of your Spanish readers. It was really beautiful. And we meet again today. I know that all of those of you who are here, you are devoted to this great writer. I believe that we are lucky because there are 40 million readers around the world. So we're lucky to be here with her now in all over 70 countries. Now we're going to further delve into the last book of this series. But of course, she's also the author of the Fjällbacka crime series that has 10 installments, and she has Women Without Mercy, Truth or Dare, and the Mentalist series that she wrote with Henrik Fexeus. And today we wrap up this trilogy that I loved with Dreams of Bronze. You can see how I've marked it everywhere. It's quite crazy. And this is the perfect ending for this Faye series. And maybe some of you haven't started reading this series yet. I can tell you that Faye, it's an incredibly strong character that Camilla has created. Well, she presented the book this morning to the media, and I went there as well with my recorder so that I could tell about it on the national radio. And she told us that her friends, when they get together, very often they talk about Faye. And whenever they face a problem and they don't know how to deal with it, a friend of hers says, "What would Faye do?" So I believe that the first question for the great Camilla Läckberg is, who is Faye? Can you describe us to all of us?
Faye is kind of who I would want to be. Faye is totally fearless. She is badass. She is girl power personified. I wanted to create this really extra everything character. So yeah, I just love everything about her, and I want to be her.
Sometimes I want to be Faye myself. Lately, I really want to be Faye all the time. I really like this answer. When a woman has character, we usually say that a woman has ovaries. It's a typical Spanish expression. I don't know how you express it in your country, because I think that actually Faye has big ovaries, as we say, to say courage.
Of when you say a man has big cojones. Yeah, just so I get that right, yeah. Yeah, which is very strange expression, because that's a very sensitive part of a man, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I think she has huge ovaries. I would say she has that, yeah. And big balls also.
It's a character that I don't like sometimes. And I think that's something you were looking for, right? To show us those darker aspects of her personality, but also those aspects of her personality that are full of light. I think it's a clear example of what a woman is capable of doing in order to look after and protect her loved ones. There is a sentence in Dreams of Bronze that I believe it's very explicit, because it says she was willing to fight for the two of them, and she's referring to Faye's mother and Faye's daughter, and she was willing to go to every extreme.
Yes, I think the thing about Faye is exactly that she's not always likable, and that is very intentional of me that I created her that way, because I don't like the image of or perception of women that we always have to be likable, and we have to be kind, and we have to be nice and forgiving and taking care of everybody. And I think that holds us back. We have to allow ourselves to not always be likable. And I think that also shows when you describe a man or a woman as when they're forceful. A man who is forceful, I have a bit of a round thing going with the sound here, so that's why I speak a little bit weird sometimes. When a man is forceful, we say that's a strong man. When a woman is the same way, we call her a bitch. I would like to change that with Faye, that it's okay to not always be likable. You don't have to please everyone just because you're a woman. My husband liked me saying this. It's like, it would be nice if you were pleasant a little bit more often. So, yeah. Just on Sundays, like every other week, it would be nice, yeah.
Eso estaría bien.
Along these 3 installments of the Faye series that I devoured, and I'm sure all the readers will agree with me, I've always thought that the engine for the story, that Faye's engine was revenge. But now that I've finished Dreams of Bronze, I've realized that her true drive, and this is going to sound slightly corny, but to me it's the strength of love. Because love is what drives us to be the people we are, that drives us to do what we do for the people we love. I believe that revenge, once I read the last page, completely disappeared from my mind. I wonder whether I'm wrong. What's your opinion about it?
Well, what's interesting with love is that it's a very double-edged sword. We usually use it as a positive word, a warm word, but there has been a lot of bad things done in the name of love as well. It's been a lot of good things done in the name of love. You can compare it with a knife. Is a knife for a good or a bad thing? Well, kind of depends on the situation. If you use it to prepare a beautiful meal, then it's a good thing. If you shove it in the back of your husband, it's a bad thing. Well, it could be a good thing also, but yeah, it depends on the situation. And when it comes to revenge, I find revenge very interesting, because to me revenge is, for Faye, and in a lot of circumstances, is about taking back power. When you're the victim of something, when someone does something bad to you, they take away the power from you. And Faye, by taking revenge, she takes back the power again. So it's actually more about power than revenge or love.
There's something else that I really liked, that it's that Camilla Läckberg has been one of the pioneers in the way you've changed the way we write thrillers. It's something clear. Some 20 years ago, there were a majority of male thriller writers. Now there are many female crime writers. And that's why the structure of thrillers has changed. In the past, female characters were weak. They needed the protection of men. They needed the protection of a hero to save them. They were usually the victims. They were the first ones to die, and if they were blonde, as it happens in films, well, even better. But now we have women who kill men, who kill powerful men. And they're main characters who don't need any men in order to become actual heroes. And not even that much heroes, but in order to become free, liberated women. They don't need those men.
I think so much has happened within literature and even TV and film in the last 20 years. Before that, it was exactly like you said. Women were victims, and I mean, we all remember the old horror movies when you have a crazy killer in the house, and the thing that's most natural to do at that point is, as a woman, is of course to go down into the basement, get undressed and take a shower. I mean, that's what we all want to do with a crazy killer in the house, right? But nowadays we see so many cool female strong characters in literature, in TV and film. I mean, it's a huge difference. When I grew up, we basically had one, and that was Modesty Blaze. Do you remember her? With her sidekick Garth, who was quite stupid and all muscles. I just love Modesty Blaze, and now we've got tons of Modesty Blaze.
We're going to delve a little bit, trying not to make spoilers, into Dreams of Bronze. And I mean no spoilers because I'm sure that there are a lot of people who haven't read it yet. So whenever we ask this question in my show on TV, there's a tradition that we ask all writers. If I ask Camilla Läckberg to close her eyes and I give her the title Dreams of Bronze, right now I have a lot of images that come to my mind, but what's the first image that came to your mind?
Actually, the first image is, and this is not a spoiler, it comes quite early in the book, it's Faye in prison. Because that was the first image that came to me when I thought what the main story would be in the third book. I pictured Faye in prison, and I thought, that's a cool thing, to put her in prison, and she will rock that prison.
De hecho,
In fact, for me, it has been one of my favorite parts in the book. And look, we're talking about prison, and there is a lot of light in that part of the book, a lot of light. I'm going to read a fragment. There was a radio playing at low volume. I'm going to read slowly so that our interpreter can interpret. So there was a radio playing low, and then all of a sudden Faye, who's in prison, surprised herself humming this show as she was, the song, as she was working with the fabric on the sewing machine. Dreams of gold, dreams of silver. It was an old song that her mother used to sing when she was a child. Here we don't have dreams of gold or silver. We only have dreams of bronze that are the worst one, Louise said before leaving the workshop. Faye smiled, but she felt hurt. Louise was right. The only dreams that she had left were the dreams of bronze, and hence the title, right?
Yeah, that was because I was thinking a lot about hopelessness, and in jail there's a lot of hopelessness, and what happens when all your big dreams have become unattainable for you. And I wanted to put Faye in such a situation where all hope seems lost.
no podemos contar.
We can say anything else, right? We leave it there, right?
Spoil too much, yeah. We will have a discussion afterwards if you do, yeah. A talk, yeah. I hope you have cojones for that talk.
No, I won't have them.
Fragmento también.
I'm going to read another fragment once she's out of prison. No, she's still in prison, sorry. What's the most difficult thing about being in prison? Agneta asked her. The lack of freedom, to be told all the time what to do, she said. Is there something positive? And Faye says, well, I was actually thinking about that the other day. Here I read a lot, as I did when I was a child. And actually, in a very short time, I felt that some of my fellow prisoners became sisters. They're very loyal. They're some of the best people I've ever met. I believe that we'll be friends forever, even though they might reach freedom before me. So we have work colleagues, well, that they're usually not actual friends, but where we have work colleagues, we have childhood friends, we have school friends or friends that come, our mothers from our children's school, or school friends when we were young. But in Faye's case, she has friends in prison, and friends she's made in this dark place where friendship is very difficult. Why did you want to show that friendship? Because, of course, we don't know that happens, but I imagine you did a little bit of research, and it must have been nice to see that life showing amongst those four walls.
I think that friendships are even more important when you're in a dark place. And in a place like a prison, I think it's extremely important to form bonds. But even in everyday life, it's when we go through the tough periods in life. We all know that's when we need our friends the most. So I do believe a lot in friendship, and I consider the friends I have now as, I mean, apart from my family, the most important thing that I have.
La familia.
It's the chosen family, right?
Yes, it's a chosen family, and actually I have quite a few girlfriends that I call sisters. They're my chosen sisters, and I love them the same way as I love my sisters. A body for you, if you know what I mean. Those kind of friends. They wouldn't ask questions, they would just bring a shovel.
I'd like to talk about a word that is a very big, important word, that is a very necessary word, which is empowerment, female empowerment. And there is plenty of it here. I believe there's a sentence that says, the history of the world is full of women like us who have been deceived, have been scammed and humiliated. Faye couldn't be more empowered in this trilogy. She eats the world. Literally, she's built her own, set up her own company that is run by women. But I like how that empowerment by Faye is collective empowerment as well. I really liked how you canalized it like that. We can notice it in her friends, in the women that she meets in prison, or even Milenka, who's a new character that shows up in this last installment. And I would love you to describe this character of Milenka, because I really like it, and I believe that she deserves a trilogy on her own right, actually.
It's really, really cool. She marries when she moves to Sweden to marry a man. She comes from Yugoslavia, and she is for many years a very traditional housewife. But then, without a spoiler, things don't go as planned. Shit happens, and she kind of takes on the leadership as a criminal mastermind. We all love those women, don't we? Take over the family business. And yeah, she was strong all along, but it wasn't until she was faced with great adversary that she realized, I have to step forward and just do what needs to be done. And she's not evil. She's not in it for the joy of doing crime. She just does it to protect her family. So I love the fact that she's a bad crime boss, but she's not bad, if you know what I mean. You kind of love her, as you say. Yeah. I want to hang out with Milenka. I bet she has some stories to tell.
Sí. A mí también. Yo contigo.
I would love that too. I would go with you. I would hang out with her, with you.
With Milenka, yeah. To some country without an extradition, yeah.
I'm going to read another fragment from Dreams of Bronze that says, Revenge, that it's the company that Faye runs, that was her home, her creation. She had started the company from scratch. She had built an empire that started with a vision and a smell for business. And she understood women and loved women. They were the only pillars in her life, the only women in whom she could trust. They were all women. Men betrayed her, were violent against her. Well, that's a lot.
Well, it does sound like a hate man, doesn't it? Well, I've been married to 3 of them, so I do enjoy them. I have to say that to all the men out there in the audience. I've got nothing against you guys. But I do... It's like when I talk about feminism, because sometimes I a little bit shrug at the word, because sometimes it's misused. Sometimes people make it about all men are bad or women are better than men. We're not better, and men are not better than women. It's not about that. It's about being appreciated for the different things we both bring to the table, that both genders bring to the table. And why I talk so much about sisterhood is because I think that men are so much better at supporting each other. Men are so much better at the boys club thing. You help each other with jobs, you make deals on the golf course where you help each other out in business, and you've got each other back. You cover for each other when the wife is about to find out about the mistress. You all know what you do. You cover for each other. And women are more competitive with each other instead of forming girls' clubs. So that's more what it's about. But on the other hand, there are a lot of women who have really, really bad experiences with men. Men are in power in this society, and that puts us a lot of times at a disadvantage. We've all met some assholes, right, girls? Yeah, we've all met them.
In fact, Faye has gone through that, because there's a key theme when we talk about this character, which is really the baggage that she carries. No, it's huge. And when I think about her, I wonder how this woman can move on when she had this past of physical abuse, emotional abuse, by her father who's a monster, by her brother who raped her. That was terrible. And then in the very end, there's something that I think a lot. I believe that our past conditions us. It really changes us. It's something that we can see over and over again in this series. And the same thing happens to Faye's fellow prisoners. It's like their past that causes their present. It's the luggage that they carry. That pain that is being inherited from generation onto the next generation. The Faye's mother's pain is inherited by pain. It's really tough to read it, and it's tough to realize it's happening on a daily basis in real life, outside literature.
Yes, I mean, that's so true, and there's so many that grow up under horrific conditions who inherit a lot of baggage from their parents. But one thing I think is very interesting to think about, I'm insanely fascinated by murderers. I have been since I was a child, and I read a lot about murderers. I watch tons of true crime, and one thing I always react to is when they use a bad upbringing as an excuse. Oh, he or she did this because they had such a bad upbringing. But that's an explanation. That's not an excuse, because there are so many other people who have a bad or even worse upbringing who go on to do good things in life. So I really don't like when it's used as an excuse, but I do think it's sometimes a valid explanation. But as humans, we always have a free will and a choice how to deal with it and how to move forward.
I'm going to read another paragraph. My first memory is of a time I spilled juice when we were on the table. I must have been 3 years old, and I still remember the noise that the glass made when it fell and the yellow stain that spread all over the floor. I remember the silence, and the next noise was my father's newspaper when he tapped it on the table. And then how the legs of the table scratched as he stood up. And then he took a step forward and he gave me a huge slap. I screamed. My mother stood up and held me in my arms to take me away. That time, the surprise and the horror were stronger than the pain itself. I think it's painful to read this paragraph, but I'm curious. How painful is it to write it? How do you face this paragraph? Because there's a lot of this in this trilogy, well, in all of your books, actually.
Well, I have colleagues who say that they scare themselves when they write scary paragraphs or horrible things like that. I am able to detach. It's like I play a movie when I write. Always when I write by just describing scenes that I see in my head. So for me it feels almost like a movie, but at the same time I also think through my writing during these 20 years I have often had the theme of children getting hurt or killed, and I've also become a mother during exactly the same time period that I became a writer. My oldest is now 22, and I've been a writer for 22 years, and I've had 4 children during these 22 years. So for me, I think it's been therapeutic. I think it's been my way of dealing with my biggest fear that something will happen to my children. So I think I've gotten that out in the books, but I am able to detach while writing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to write that.
Bueno, vamos a relajar.
Okay, we're going to relax a little bit because these were quite tough questions, but we're going to talk about Faye's sexual freedom. It's amazing. She has such a great time.
Cuéntame esto, cuéntame.
Tell me a little bit more about it. She's not afraid. She has no sort of tie-ins. She's so free. I'm fascinated by her.
She is, and I wanted to create her that way because that is something that is still not allowed or acceptable. I mean, you all know that a guy who sleeps around is at least considered by his male friends as a stud and a real man, but a woman who does the same is called a slut. So there is a double standard, and I wanted to Faye to break that standard and just have fun and let her hair down and go pick up young men in bars, and yeah, she's enjoying herself.
But Faye is a mother. There's a sentence she says when she looks at her daughter, when she says, "I promise that you'll live without getting to know evil." Of course, is utopian because evil is everywhere. It's something we've just seen in your country with the shooting yesterday in Örebro that has left 11 casualties, among whom the attacker himself. And you, as a writer who writes about evil, how can we combat evil? How can we look for mechanisms so that it doesn't triumph? I believe that the key word here is education. Am I correct, Camilla?
Yes, education, and also very strong social system. There's a lot of kids that fall through the cracks and grows up to become individuals that use as an excuse they had a bad childhood and do evil things. And actually in the case of the mass shooting yesterday, they have identified the guy who did it. I also have to say that this is very personal for me because yesterday I almost had a heart attack because I came out of a meeting. I was in Copenhagen and I saw the news flash that said mass shooting at a school in Örebro. My son goes to a school in Örebro, so my heart nearly stopped. My 22-year-old son studies there at university, but then I saw I had a text from my husband and it said, "I've talked to him, he's fine." And in that case of the mass shooter, he ticks every box for what those typically are. Someone who was alone, isolated, considered a bit odd, and society missed all those signals. We have to be more aware, and with mental illness and people feel, I mean, it's a big danger now that we're shutting down a lot of mental hospital and things like that, at least in Sweden. I don't know what's like in Spain, but that's been going on for many years in Sweden. So we have a lot of people out on the streets who are potentially dangerous. We need to be able to take care of them.
I'm going to ask just one more question so that you can think about your questions, because you'll have a Q&A session, and I'm sure that once you're back home, if you don't ask your question, you'll regret it. So I'm going to ask a quick question, and then we're going to leave you the floor. I know the answer already because she mentioned it in the press conference this morning, but where you're closing this trilogy, what now? Because I believe that you have something pending in March, no? Maybe a book's coming out?
It's not coming out in March, but it's due to deliver the manuscript to the publishing house 1st of March, and it's the next Fjällbacka book. So I'm currently hanging with Eric and Patrick a lot.
There's a lot left until we'll be able to read this new installment, but that's why we have this Faye trilogy, so that we can entertain ourselves until the next Fjällbacka series come out, installment. Do we have any questions? Come on.
Ask me anything you want. I've got no filter whatsoever. You might have noticed already, so yeah.
Hi Camilla, thank you for coming. We're very excited to see you. One question, I'm absolutely in love with Erika, Patrick, their kids, how they split and came back together again. I was interested to know, what is your main source of inspiration before you sit down and start writing a book? Is it a personal story, or is it something else that you observe, or is it just your imagination?
Usually before I start a book, I get usually an image in my head, actually, and a title. I can reveal that with the next book, the one I'm writing right now. I don't know the exact translation in English, but it would be called something like The Crier. We have something we call Crier, which is women who are from a tradition from Karelen in Russia, where they go to funerals and sing to help others with their grief. So that's going to be the title. And I also saw an open grave on the graveyard in Fjällbacka, and that started to get me thinking. So most often it's just a small idea like that and an image, and then I start building on it.
Hi. I wanted to ask, when you build a new character, do you already have the full personality kind of decided in your head on how this person is going to be? Or do you build it as you go and as they are exposed to different situations and you kind of decide how they react depending on the situation?
Funnily enough, they often come to me as quite finished characters. It's like someone comes up to me and introduces themselves and says that, "Hi, I'm Martin, how do you do?" And I just start getting to know them. Or if I'm going to create a villain, I just go down the list of people I don't like and I pick one. That's the easiest one. So be nice to me, that's what I'm saying. Otherwise, you'll end up in one of my books as a villain. And I will kill you in a very gruesome way. It will be painful. Come on, don't be shy. You must have questions.
Nadie.
I won't embarrass you. Oh, maybe I will a little, but yeah.
Bueno, yo quería preguntar.
I wanted to ask you if the Mentalist trilogy is going to be taken to the small screen or the big screen, whether it's going to be adapted for film or TV.
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you because that's top secret. So You take what you want from that answer, and it would be painful. Don't get too attached to your cojones. It's a very funny word for a Swede, so that's kind of why I like to say it so much.
Aquí también.
It's actually quite funny here too. I have another question. Have you got any sort of superstition or quirk before you start writing a book?
And not really superstitions, but I'm very good at procrastinating. So when I'm starting to write a book, my house is so unbelievably well organized because I start with projects like, and they feel absolutely necessary at that point. For example, I start color sorting my socks, and I arrange my books according to color, and I decide to go through all my old receipts, and my house right now is so organized.
Hola.
Hello, I think I'm going to ask you something pretty silly, but will you have cojones in your next installment to dare killing the ABBA music band? Are you going to dare killing ABBA? The music band.
ABBA, I would be chased from Sweden. And I don't think any other country in the world would accept me, especially Australia. They love ABBA extra much over there. So, no, I think they're safe. There are other bands I would consider killing, but not ABBA.
Muchas gracias. Por allí tenemos otra.
Thank you very much. Any other questions over there? Maybe 2. First of all, I know that you're obsessed with murders, and I wonder why. And then another question is, how do you avoid falling into cliches? Where do you have this inspiration? Because you said that you get a picture in your mind, but how do you manage not to fall into those cliches, particularly when you've written so much?
Question. I don't know why I've always been so obsessed with murders and murderers. That started when I was like 4 or 5 years old. You might have read this story if you read about me, but I was 4 years old when I wrote my first book, or rather I drew paintings and I made my father write the text, and it was 4 pages long. It was called Santa, and on the first page, it's really, really cute. Santa and his wife is holding hands, and the sun is shining, and she's got flowers. And 4 pages later, at the end, very short story, she is lying on the floor, and blood is running from her Santa hat. So I'm just happy that my parents didn't drag me to a really good child psychologist, because I would probably not sit here. And as it goes for cliches, yes, I do try to stay away from them. I never open a book with a man out walking his dog finding a dead body. I don't have any police lieutenants that drink too much whiskey and listens to opera or jazz, if you want to spice it up a little. So yeah, I try to stay away from them. 1 or 2 probably slips in at some point, but hopefully my editor edits that out then.
Una por aquí, ¿verdad?
Another question over here. Hello, good evening, and thank you very much for this presentation. I would like to ask you about your creative process, because you said that you start with an image in your mind, and then I guess what you say is that you add more elements to the plot, but you have an idea, you know where you're going, or do you build it as you write and then you rewrite the whole story once that you reach the end so that you can correct whatever does not match your final idea? Because I understand that if you create that plot as you're writing, maybe by the time you reach the ending, you might have found a one-way street, or maybe, a wrong path.
Quite weird creative process compared to my colleagues, most of them. I work according to some kind of chaos principle, and it freaks me out myself every time I start a new book, but I try to rely on that. I've done this a couple of times and it's worked out in the end. I start on the first page with the little idea that I have, and then I write chronologically. So the way you read my books is the exact way that I've written them, and strangely enough, I never have had to go back and rewrite. I have to, of course, edit and fill in some holes that always appears, but I have never had to rewrite like whole sections. To me, it's like someone is in my ear telling me the story. But that said, even though I only know like 1% of the book, even less when I start writing it, I always know who the murderer and what the motive is. So it's like driving, and I know my final destination. I just don't quite know what the road there is going to look like. So it's chaos, and that's why I procrastinate and sort my socks instead of writing.
No sé si queda alguna.
I wonder whether we have other questions, or shall we wrap up? Good afternoon. Besides the murder of Olof Palme, well, Sweden used to be a very secure, safe country. Has this changed? And do you have more sources of inspiration now with the crime that is on the rise in Sweden?
This image of Sweden, that it's been like this perfect country, and I've understood that through these 20 years of traveling the world, and everyone thinks it's like picture perfect, at least until a couple of years ago. They also think that all Swede women are tall and blonde, so they're usually very disappointed when this hobbit shows up. But I mean, Sweden has, whenever there's humans, there's going to be trouble, right? So Sweden has, of course, has had criminality in all shapes and forms, domestic abuse, drugs, trafficking. We've had all of that, always. It hasn't been perfect, but the last few years, yes, it's been a shitstorm, and we have a lot of gang violence, which actually doesn't inspire me. I'm much more interested in crimes that are within close relations and dysfunctional families. I love dysfunctional families. Nothing gives me materials as dysfunctional families, and my own has been a great source of material. So yeah, I just think the gang violence is depressing.
Bueno, yo creo que si os parece.
I believe that if you agree, because I'm sure that you want your books to be signed, I'm just going to get a last question that was asked by a colleague this morning. What are you afraid of? What is Camilla Läckberg afraid of?
Oh my goodness. I mean, apart from something happening to my children, of course, because that's always the number one fear. That's why I have them locked in the basement at a home that's sorted out that problem. But apart from that, water, and I don't mean like this water, I mean swimming out at sea or something like that. It totally freaks me out. It's probably because my brother and I, when I was a teenager, we stayed up a whole night and watched 4 Jaws movies in a row. So I can't even go to a beach and dip my toe in the water before I hear dum 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 dum. Yeah, so I think that would be my greatest fear. Oh, I have another fear that I thought of while I was going up in this very, very, very slow elevator and trying not to fart in it. That would have been bad. Another fear is, have you seen these Instagram reels where someone is pranking people who's about to go on a roller coaster? Usually when there's it starts with a big drop. The second before it drops, the person who controls the roller coasters says, "Oh my God, I forgot to strap you in." That is another fear I have. And snakes.
Y las serpientes. Bueno, pues yo creo que es el...
Well, I believe that now it's time for the book sign, and we need to give her a big round of applause.
Perfecto. Una foto, genial.